High Admiral Vex stood at the bridge of the Stellar Vanguard, his iridescent scales reflecting the soft blue glow of the ship's holographic displays. The Kraxan fleet's most advanced warship hung in the darkness of space, its crystalline hull designed to inspire awe in those fortunate, or unfortunate, enough to witness it. Below them spread a blue-green planet unmarked on any of their star charts, practically begging to be claimed. Preliminary scans complete, Admiral, announced First Officer Naira, her forearms moving gracefully across the control panels. The planet shows abundant resources, particularly in rare minerals our empire desperately needs. Atmospheric composition is ideal for colonization, and our long-range scans detect only primitive technology. It appears to be a fortuitous discovery. Vex's serpentine eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic projection. Something about this seemed too perfect, too convenient. In 3 centuries of exploration and conquest, he'd learned that the universe rarely offered such gifts without a price. Yet the Kraxan Empire's resource crisis left them little choice but to investigate every potential opportunity. Launch the advanced reconnaissance drones, Vex commanded. I want detailed surface scans before we commit our ground forces. The drones deployed silently, their quantum engines allowing them to reach the planet's atmosphere within minutes. As data began streaming back, the bridge crew's excitement grew palpable. The planet seemed more promising with each new scan. "Sir," called out Science Officer Zax, his crystalline antennae twitching with confusion. "I'm detecting something unusual. The planet appears to be inhabited by bipedal beings, but their technology level is inconsistent." Vex glided to Zax's station. "Explain." "They have primitive combustion vehicles and basic electronic communications, yet I'm also detecting scattered points of surprisingly advanced energy signatures. It's as if their technological development is completely uneven." Before Vex could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. The reconnaissance drones were going dark, one after another. Not destroyed, simply offline, as if their systems had been completely disabled. "Impossible," Naira muttered. "Those drones use quantum encryption. Nothing short of advanced military tech should be able to." Her words cut off as the ship's main display flickered and changed. Instead of the serene view of the planet, they now saw a transmission. A human face, pink, mostly hairless except for the top of the head, with 2 eyes and a mouth stretched into what the Kraxan's cultural database identified as a smile. "Greetings, visitors," the human said, speaking perfect galactic standard. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Initiative. I believe there's been a misunderstanding." The bridge fell silent. Earth. The name sent chills through every Kraxan present. They'd all heard the stories, the legends, the warnings. Earth wasn't supposed to be in the sector. Earth wasn't supposed to be this primitive. Earth wasn't supposed to be here at all. "This is impossible," Vex said, his usual composure cracking. "Earth is a myth, a cautionary tale told to ambitious young commanders." Dr. Chen's smile widened. "I assure you, Admiral Vex, we are very real. And while we appreciate your interest in our planet, I should warn you that Earth has a rather extensive history of dealing with unexpected visitors. Would you like to discuss this diplomatically, or shall we demonstrate why none of your predecessors ever returned from their attempted invasions?" As if to emphasize her point, the ship's sensors suddenly detected hundreds of small objects rising from the planet's surface. They moved with impossible agility, defying the laws of physics as the Kraxans understood them. "Admiral," Naira's voice shook slightly. "Those objects, they're not showing up on our targeting systems. It's as if they're simultaneously there and not there." Vex watched as the strange craft surrounded his fleet, their designs unlike anything he'd seen in all his years of space combat. They weren't threatening, not overtly, but their very presence seemed to mock everything the Kraxans knew about military technology. "Dr. Chin," Vex said, drawing himself up to his full height. "I believe we would very much prefer the diplomatic approach." "Wonderful choice," Chun responded. "Though I should mention, those aren't actually our defense craft you're seeing. They're just holograms we projected to your ships. A little trick we developed after the last attempted invasion. Your real concern should be the microscopic nanobots that have already attached themselves to your hull and disabled your weapons systems." Vex felt his scales pale. They hadn't detected anything. Even now, their sensors showed all systems normal, yet somehow he knew she was telling the truth. "Welcome to Earth, Admiral Vex," Chin continued pleasantly. "We find that first contact goes much smoother when everyone understands their relative position from the start. Now, shall we discuss cultural exchange and trade agreements over tea? We have quite a lovely selection." And that was how the mighty Kraxan Empire's latest conquest became their most embarrassing diplomatic mission, and eventually, their most valuable alliance. Though it would be years before Vex could enjoy tea without twitching. The Stellar Vanguard's diplomatic chamber was unlike anything Dr. Sarah Chen had ever seen, despite her years working with extraterrestrial technology. Crystalline walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and gravity seemed to shift subtly with each breath. Yet somehow, the most alien thing in the room was the sight of Admiral Vex attempting to hold a teacup with his scaled appendages. "Your beverage ritual is challenging," Vex admitted, finally managing to lift the cup without spilling. His serpentine eyes studied the steam rising from the green tea. "Though I must admit, the aroma is intriguing." "That's Earl Grey, actually," Chen corrected, hiding her amusement. "And you're holding the cup upside down." Behind Vex, First Officer Naira made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh, quickly disguised as a cough. The tension in the room had shifted from diplomatic anxiety to something closer to awkward cultural exchange. "What I don't understand," Vex said, finally righting the cup, "is why our intelligence failed so catastrophically. We had reports of a primitive world, barely achieving spaceflight. Yet you have technology that renders our most advanced systems obsolete." Chen set down her own cup, her expression turning serious. "That's because we wanted you to see exactly that. Earth learned long ago that appearing weak can be our greatest strength. While other civilizations focus on building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, we've perfected the art of being underestimated." The holograms that had surrounded the Kraxan fleet flickered into existence within the chamber, miniaturized but perfect in detail. They danced around the tea set like ethereal butterflies. "These projections, for instance," Chen continued, "operate on principles your scientists would consider impossible. We don't just bend light, we bend probability itself." "The nanobots that disabled your weapons?" "They exist in a quantum state that your sensors can't detect because they're technically not there until they need to be." Vex's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of both distress and fascination. "But why maintain this deception? Why not simply demonstrate your power openly?" "Because, Admiral, Earth's greatest defense isn't our technology, it's human nature itself. We're descendants of prey animals who learn to outthink their predators. We don't win by being the strongest, we win by being the most adaptable." As if to demonstrate, Chen pulled out what appeared to be an ancient mechanical watch. With a few precise movements, she disassembled it, revealing that its interior contained technology that made the Kraxan's quantum computers look primitive. "Everything on Earth is like this watch," she explained. "What appears simple on the surface often contains layers of complexity that we've learned to hide in plain sight. Our cities might look primitive, but they're built on foundations of programmable matter. Those combustion vehicles your scans detected? Many of them are actually sophisticated autonomous units that can reconfigure themselves at a molecular level." Naira stepped forward, her forearms gesturing in excitement. "The scattered advanced energy signatures we detected." "Decoys," Chin smiled. "Well, most of them. We found that the best way to hide our real advanced technology is to let potential invaders focus on obvious energy signatures that turn out to be elaborate honeypots." Vex sat back, his tea forgotten. "Your entire planet is a tactical deception." "Not exactly," Chen corrected. "We simply learned to advance differently than most species. While others reach for the stars, we reached inward, mastering the fundamental forces of reality itself. We don't need massive warships when we can manipulate the fabric of space-time with devices that fit in our pockets." To demonstrate, she pulled out what looked like an ordinary smartphone. With a few taps, a portion of the chamber seemed to fold in on itself, creating a window through which they could see the surface of Mars. "That's impossible," Naira whispered. "Impossible is what humans do best," Chin replied. "We've found that the laws of physics are more like strong suggestions once you understand them properly." Your empire builds incredible technologies, Admiral, but you're limited by your assumptions about what's possible. Vex studied Chin with new understanding. The stories about Earth, they weren't exaggerated, were they? If anything, they understated the truth. The stories got one thing right, Chin agreed. Every species that's tried to conquer Earth has failed not because we destroyed them, but because we showed them a better way. Your empire is facing a resource crisis, yes? What if I told you we could teach you to synthesize any element you need from base matter? What if scarcity itself could become obsolete? The implications hit Vex like a gravitational wave. His empire had spent centuries conquering worlds for resources when they could have simply learned to create what they needed. They had built their civilization on the assumption that power came from control of finite resources, while Earth had transcended the very concept of scarcity. I believe, Vex said carefully, finally taking a proper sip of his tea, that the Kraxan Empire would be very interested in establishing a cultural exchange program. Chen's smile widened. Excellent. Though I should warn you, our teaching methods can be rather unconventional. Are you ready to unlearn everything you think you know about reality? The look of mingled terror and excitement on Vex's face suggested that the real first contact was only just beginning. Deep within an underground facility beneath what appeared to be an ordinary coffee shop in Seattle, Admiral Vex watched in stunned silence as Dr. Chen's team demonstrated Earth's true technological capabilities. The room itself seemed to defy physics, being simultaneously vast enough to house a small city, yet occupying no more physical space than a storage closet. What you're seeing is a pocket dimension, explained Dr. Marcus Wong, one of Chen's top scientists. His casual tone made it sound as routine as describing the weather. We use them for everything from storage to waste management. This particular one houses our primary research facility. Vex's scales shimmered with a mix of confusion and awe. Your species has mastered dimensional engineering, and you use it to store laboratory equipment? And sometimes leftovers, Chin added with a grin. You'd be amazed how convenient it is to have infinite storage space in your refrigerator. But the real shock came when they reached the central chamber. Here, suspended in what looked like ordinary air, floated a perfect replica of the Kraxan fleet. Every ship, every system, every quantum-encrypted security measure laid bare in perfect detail. How? Naira began, her forearms gesturing in disbelief. Our ship's designs are protected by the most advanced security protocols in the galaxy. Oh, that? Wong waved dismissively. We didn't hack your systems or anything so crude. We simply observed your ships from multiple quantum realities simultaneously and compiled the data. It's basic multidimensional observation theory. Vex felt his head spin. Basic? Well, yes, Chin interjected. It's something we teach children in elementary school now, along with probability manipulation and temporal mechanics. Speaking of which, she checked her seemingly ordinary wristwatch. We should move to the next demonstration before the temporal variance shifts. As they walked, or rather, as space shifted around them while they remained stationary, Chin explained further. You see, Admiral, humans never developed technology the way other species did. We didn't progress in a linear fashion from mechanical to digital to quantum. Instead, we learned to think sideways. They entered another chamber where a group of teenagers appeared to be playing some sort of game, waving their hands in complex patterns while reality itself bent around them. These are students from our junior physics program, Wong explained. They're learning to manipulate fundamental forces through direct neural interface. We find it helps them understand the malleable nature of reality before they move on to more complex concepts. One of the teenagers noticed their presence and waved excitedly, accidentally causing a small temporal eddy that made Tuesday happen twice. Wong quickly stabilized the time stream with a touch of his tablet. Sorry about that, he said to the startled Kraxans. Teenagers, you know? Still learning to control their quantum fluctuations. Vex watched as another student casually reached into what appeared to be yesterday to retrieve a forgotten homework assignment. Your children can manipulate time itself, and you consider this normal? As normal as your species considers faster-than-light travel, Chin replied. Though we found that method rather limiting. Why travel faster than light when you can simply adjust the fundamental properties of space-time to make any 2 points identical? She demonstrated by stepping through what looked like an ordinary doorway and emerging simultaneously from every entrance and exit in the facility. The Vex watched in amazement as dozens of Chens carried on different conversations before merging back into a single person. "That's how we managed to disable your fleet so easily," she explained, now somehow both beside him and across the room. "We didn't need to overcome your defenses, we simply existed in all possible states where your systems had already failed." Naira, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "But why hide all this? Why maintain the facade of a primitive civilization?" Chen's expression turned serious, her multiple instances converging into one. "Because, Officer Naira, not everyone is ready to handle this kind of knowledge responsibly. We learned that lesson the hard way. Humanity nearly destroyed itself several times before we understood that technological advancement without philosophical evolution is a path to extinction." She gestured to the students, who were now taking turns creating and destroying universes in a controlled environment. "That's why we start them young, teaching not just the how but the why. Power without wisdom is just another form of destruction." Vex watched as a student accidentally created a paradox, and Wang calmly helped her resolve it before it could unravel causality. "And you're willing to share this knowledge with us? After we came here as conquerors?" Admiral Chen smiled. "Every species that has ever encountered Earth has come as a conqueror. Those who learn from the experience become our allies. Those who don't." She shrugged. "Well, let's just say there are many realities, and not all of them are pleasant places to exist." The implicit warning was clear, but so was the opportunity. The Kraxan Empire stood at a crossroads. They could either embrace this new understanding of reality or remain trapped by their own limitations. "Where do we begin?" Vex asked, his voice humble for perhaps the first time in his centuries-long life. Chen's smile widened as she pulled out what appeared to be an ordinary pencil. "First lesson. Nothing is what it appears to be. Now, watch carefully as I explain how this simple writing tool can rewrite the laws of physics." Back aboard the Stellar Vanguard, Admiral Vex sat in his private quarters, staring at what appeared to be an ordinary pencil, the same one Dr. Chin had given him. His entire worldview had been shattered, rebuilt, and shattered again in the span of a few Earth days. The pencil, she had explained, was both a test and a key to understanding. "You're holding it wrong," came Chen's voice from everywhere and nowhere at once. She stepped out of what might have been a shadow or might have been the space between moments, now familiar enough with Kraxan biology to recognize Vex's expression of startled resignation. "I wasn't aware there was a wrong way to hold a writing implement," Vex replied dryly. "There isn't, usually. But that's not actually a pencil. Just like Earth isn't actually a primitive planet, and I'm not actually standing here right now." She smiled as Vex's scales rippled in confusion. "Or maybe I am. The point is, you're still thinking in absolutes." The lesson was interrupted by First Officer Naira's urgent entrance. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from the Empire. They're concerning." Chen's expression turned serious. "They've discovered the anomalies, haven't they?" Naira nodded. "Similar, primitive planets appearing throughout Kraxan space. Each one seemingly defenseless, each one proving impossible to conquer. It's as if Earth isn't unique," Chen finished. "Because it isn't. At least, not in the way you think." Vex looked up sharply. "Explain. Those other planets you're finding? They're not copies of Earth. They're echoes. Reflections. Possibilities." Chen took the pencil from Vex's hand, twirling it between her fingers. Reality seemed to ripple around it. "Humanity didn't just master space and time, Admiral. We mastered probability itself." The implications hit Vex like a quantum wave collapsing. "You're saying Earth exists in multiple states simultaneously? Now you're beginning to understand." Chen pointed the pencil at the ship's viewport. The stars outside shifted, showing different configurations, different possibilities. Every time a species develops the capability to threaten others on a galactic scale, they find an Earth. Their Earth. The Earth they need to encounter. Naira's forearms moved in complex patterns as she processed this information. "The stories about Earth, every species has them, but they're all different." "Because they're all true," Shun confirmed. "Somewhere, someone, every version of Earth exists. We learned to control this quantum multiplicity millennia ago. Or yesterday. Or never. It depends on which probability stream you're observing. Vex stood, his commanding presence somewhat undermined by the existential crisis evident in his color-shifting scales. Why reveal this to us now? Chen's expression turned grave. Because something's coming, Admiral. Something that threatens not just one Earth or one reality, but all of them. We've been preparing for this by positioning versions of Earth throughout space and time, creating a network of defense points disguised as tempting targets. She held up the pencil again, and this time Vex saw it for what it really was, a key to understanding reality itself. The graphite wasn't graphite, the wood wasn't wood, and what he thought was a simple eraser could probably rewrite the fundamental constants of the universe. The Kraxan Empire prides itself on conquest, Chen continued, but what we're facing can't be defeated by conventional means. We need allies who can learn to think beyond convention, beyond the possible. We need species who can adapt, who can learn to see reality as malleable rather than fixed. And that's why you let us find you, Naira realized. You wanted us to try to invade. We needed you to fail, Chen corrected. But more importantly, we needed you to understand why you failed. The pencil, Admiral, isn't just a test. It's an invitation. Vex picked up the pencil again, seeing it with new eyes. An invitation to what? To join something bigger than an empire. There's a reason we appear primitive on the surface. The greatest power doesn't come from impressive displays, it comes from understanding that reality itself is negotiable. She gestured, and suddenly they were standing in what appeared to be a vast council chamber, though they hadn't moved. Around them were representatives of countless species, each thinking they were attending a private meeting on their own world. Welcome, Chen said, to the Real Earth Defense Initiative. We're not just defending one planet or one reality. We're defending existence itself. The pencil in Vex's hand hummed with potential. All he had to do was learn to use it correctly, to understand that, like Earth itself, it was both exactly what it appeared to be and something infinitely more complex. When do we begin? He asked. Chen smiled. We already have. In fact, we finished centuries ago. And we're also about to start. Time, like everything else, is a matter of perspective. Vex looked at the pencil again, finally understanding. It wasn't about the tool, it was about learning to see beyond the obvious, to understand that reality was far more flexible than his species had ever imagined. And somewhere, in every possible version of existence, Earth waited patiently for others to learn the same lesson. The Council Chamber of Earth's Defense Initiative buzzed with an energy that transcended conventional physics. Representatives from countless civilizations, some that existed simultaneously in multiple realities, others that had yet to exist at all, gathered to confront a threat that few could even comprehend. We call them the Void Makers, Chen explained, as a holographic display showed what appeared to be holes in reality itself. They don't invade spaces, they erase them. They don't conquer civilizations, they make it so they never existed in the first place. Vex watched as entire galaxies simply ceased to be in the simulation. His grip tightened on the pencil, his key to understanding this new reality. How does one fight an enemy that unmakes existence? By remaking it, came a new voice. Dr. Wong stepped forward, but this wasn't the casual scientist they'd met in the research facility. This version of him seemed older, harder, as if he'd seen the end of everything and found a way back. We've been preparing for this since before humans learned to walk upright. Every invasion attempt, every failed conquest of Earth, they were all tests, training exercises for potential allies. The chamber shifted, showing scenes from countless attempted invasions of Earth throughout history and across realities. In each one, Earth appeared primitive, vulnerable, until it wasn't. Your empire wasn't the first to discover a seemingly defenseless Earth, Chen continued. And in every reality where it happened, the would-be conquerors learned the same lesson. Appearances are negotiable, but understanding is power. Naira, who had been studying the holographic displays with all four arms moving in complex analytical patterns, spoke up. These void makers, they're not just erasing space. They're erasing possibility itself. Exactly, Wong confirmed. Their entropy given consciousness, absence with purpose. They don't just destroy, they make it impossible for anything to exist in the spaces they claim. The pencil in Vex's hand suddenly felt heavier, more significant. And this, he held it up. This is more than just a lesson in perspective, isn't it? Chen smiled, but there was a weight to it now. That pencil exists in every reality, in every version of Earth, in the hands of every species who proves themselves ready to understand. It's not just a tool, it's a piece of the ultimate defense system. We couldn't build weapons big enough to fight the Void Makers, Wang explained. So instead, we built small. We created tools that could rewrite reality itself, disguised as the most mundane objects imaginable. Your pencil? It's actually a quantum probability anchor. When activated properly, it can stabilize a region of space-time against the Void Maker's entropy effect. The chamber filled with representatives from across time and space holding up their own versions of the pencil. Some appeared as simple writing tools, others as crystals, data pads, or things Vex's mind couldn't quite process. The network is almost complete, Chen said. Each civilization that learns to see beyond the obvious becomes another anchor point, another defender of existence itself. The Kraxan Empire's tendency to seek conquest actually made you perfect candidates. You already understand the importance of holding territory. Now you just need to learn to hold reality itself. Vex looked at his fleet through the chamber's windows, seeing them with new understanding. Our ships, our weapons, they're insignificant compared to this. Your ships are exactly as significant as they need to be, Chen corrected. Everything has its place in the defense of existence. Even the illusion of primitive worlds serves a purpose. It helps us identify civilizations ready to learn a greater truth. And now, Wang added, his expression grim, we've run out of time for lessons. The Void Makers have begun their final push. Look. The chamber's display showed reality itself beginning to unravel at the edges of known space. Worlds weren't just being destroyed, they were being retroactively erased from existence, taking with them all possibility of ever having been. This, Chen said, her voice carrying across all realities, is what we've been preparing for. Every invasion that failed, every civilization that learned to see beyond the obvious, it was all leading to this moment. Or rather, to every possible version of this moment. Vex stood, his scales shifting through colors that reflected the gravity of the situation. What do you need us to do? Chen's smile was both ancient and new, existing in all moments at once. First, Admiral, you need to learn how to properly hold that pencil. Because when the time comes, all times, every time, that simple writing tool in your hand will help decide whether existence itself continues to be possible. The pencil hummed with potential, and somewhere in the spaces between moments, the Void Makers advanced, unmaking reality itself with each impossibly vast step. In the moment of crisis, as reality itself began to fray at its edges, Admiral Vex finally understood what Dr. Chin had been trying to teach him all along. The pencil in his hand wasn't just a tool or a weapon, it was a choice, a possibility made manifest. They're breaching the outer defense layers, Naira reported, her forearms working frantically across multiple control interfaces. Across every version of reality, the Void Makers press their advance, their non-existence consuming everything in their path. Good, Chen said, drawing surprised looks from everyone in the chamber. They're doing exactly what they need to do. Vex's scales shifted in confusion. You wanted them to break through? Want is a limited concept, Wang explained, manipulating what appeared to be a child's toy but was actually a reality phase calculator. Like the quantum probability anchors you're all holding, this entire situation is both exactly what it appears to be and something entirely different. The chamber's displays showed the Void Makers advance, or rather, showed the absence of everything in their wake. They moved like holes in existence itself, anti-reality given form and purpose. Now, Chen commanded, her voice reaching across all possible timelines. Everyone, activate your anchors. Remember, don't try to fight the void. Embrace it. Vex looked at his pencil, understanding flooding through him. All this time, they'd been thinking about resistance, about fighting back. But that was old thinking, the kind of linear warfare that had no place in this battle. Right, he whispered to himself and pressed the pencil to reality itself. Across countless versions of existence, representatives of every spacefaring civilization did the same. Each with their own version of the quantum anchor, each finally understanding its true purpose. They weren't trying to stop the void makers, they were giving them exactly what they wanted. The void demands emptiness, Chin explained as reality began to shift around them. So we give it emptiness. We give it so much emptiness that it becomes something else entirely. The void makers surged forward, consuming everything in their path. But as they did, each quantum anchor activated, creating not resistance but acceptance. The void expanded, grew, multiplied, until it hit critical mass. You see, Wang said, watching as the planned millennia in the making reached its culmination, the opposite of existence isn't non-existence. It's possibility. The void, expanded beyond its own capacity for nothingness, began to change. Where it had consumed reality, new realities began to form. Where it had erased possibility, infinite possibilities bloomed. The greatest defense, Chen said, smiling as creation itself reformed around them, isn't in fighting destruction, but in understanding that destruction and creation are the same thing viewed from different angles. The void makers, entities of pure entropy, found themselves transformed. Their very nature, the power to unmake, became the power to make. They had sought to end all possibility, but in doing so, they had become the source of endless possibility. Vex watched in awe as his simple pencil wrote new laws of physics into existence. Across all realities, the quantum anchors did the same, each civilization contributing its own understanding to the new framework of existence. Reality, Chin explained, as the universe reconstructed itself around them, was never something to be protected. It was something to be reinvented. The void makers weren't our enemies, they were the catalyst we needed for the next stage of existence. The chamber, which had existed in all possible locations simultaneously, settled into a new configuration. The representatives of countless civilizations found themselves not in a defensive bunker, but in a creative nexus. So what now? Naira asked, watching as reality stabilized into its new form. Now, Chen smiled, picking up her own quantum anchor, which appeared to her as a cup of tea. Now we begin the real work. Creating is much harder than defending, after all. Vex looked at his pencil, which was both still a pencil and now something infinitely more complex. You planned this from the beginning. Earth wasn't preparing for a war, it was preparing for a transformation. Earth, Wang corrected, was preparing for every possible outcome. This was just the one we hoped for most. And across all realities, in every possible version of existence, the former void makers began their new role not as destroyers of possibility, but as its guardians. The universe hadn't been saved, it had been rewritten, transformed, made new. Welcome, Chin said to everyone and everyone at once, to the next chapter. Vex held up his pencil, ready to write whatever came next. After all, reality was just another story waiting to be told.